Hello.
Hello.
Welcome, family.
We're all
We
new
are,
and shiny this morning, aren't we?
yes, I smell better. And I was just commenting on Sis's roses. Those are the last of the Mohicans, the last
Yeah.
flowers of the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Very
beautiful.
last. Yeah.
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 So
Thank
we're
you.
on lesson 314, and I'll be reading it, and Nook has some beautiful insights to share with us, and also part of the text from chapter 7. We're going to be stringing that into this as well. So that's going to be wonderful. This lesson is entitled, I Seek a Future Different from the Past. I seek a future different from the past. From new perception of the world, there comes a future very different from the past. The future now is recognized as but extension of the present. Past mistakes can cast no shadows on it, so that fear has lost its idols and its images, and being formless, it has no effects. Death will not claim the future now, for life is now its goal, and all the needed means are happily provided. Who can grieve or suffer when the present has been freed, extending its security and peace into a quiet future filled with hope? Father,
I'm sorry. Can you read that last line again? Because I think there's
yes,
something different here.
who can grieve or suffer when the present has been freed, extending its security and peace into a quiet future filled with hope?
Hmm.
What do
In
you
the
have?
FIP, they've changed the word hope to joy, and I like that better. Hmm.
The
Thanks.
certainty. Yeah, thank you. So, paragraph 2. Father, we were mistaken in the past and choose to use the present to be free. Now do we leave the future in your hands, leaving behind our past mistakes, and sure that you will keep your present promises and guide the future in their holy light.
Hmm.
I seek a future different from the past.
And I think this next section that we're going to read, there are 4 paragraphs from chapter
7?
7,
Mm-hmm.
section 8, the unbelievable belief.
Isn't it section
Um,
7 also?
I thought it was section 8. Is it? Well,
Um,
it's section 8 in the FIP version. In the CE or the COA version, it might be section 7. What do you
no,
have, sis?
no, okay. It's difficult on the phone because it jumps around if you don't touch
Okay.
it just right. But chapter 7, you're right, section 8,
Mhm.
the unbelievable belief. And
Mm.
I can't believe I haven't seen this section before.
Well, actually, you and I read it
We did?
together. Yeah. Yeah, I have a note on my original
Okay.
there. So we did read it. I'm not sure. I think it was the year before last.
Last lifetime, probably. Okay, well, that's good. So, well, can we first just kind of summarize how the ego uses the past now for those who may not really get that?
Do you think we should do that at the conclusion of these paragraphs
Sure.
so that
Okay.
we can explain, so that Jesus can explain um, the extent of projection, and then we can tie it in with the past?
Okay.
Okay? Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Good.
Trust that.
Okay. So
Tell
I've
us
just,
what paragraph.
yeah, paragraphs 2 to 5. But before I start, there's one line I want to include here from the first paragraph. We have said that without projection, there can be no anger. But it is also true that without extension, there can be no love. Right. So, but he says, we've said that without projection, there can be no anger. That is so profound, that statement. What I'm seeing more deeply is that anything or anybody we're triggered by, or anything we're triggered by, anybody we're triggered by, comes solely from our own projection. Like 100%. It's our projection, right? Of course, if we're not triggered and yet the body's seeing something, but there's zero trigger,
Right.
then it's not our projection because we're neutral, all right? There's forgiveness has taken place. Only when we're triggered,
Right.
then we know it comes from our mind.
That's right.
It's a very difficult pill to swallow when we say it's 100%. It's 100% our projection.
We come back to every brother is the Christ, and there's one view of that brother. And if we're not beholding a brother with God's view, then we have superimposed our beliefs over that, right? It's our filter that is preventing us from viewing our brother as innocent, as the Christ. Yes.
Okay. Yes. And the reason that we see them as sinful or guilty or whatever is because the ego, we've sided with the ego, and the ego wants us to believe that we are that sin. Yes. We are sin incarnate.
Because and of course,
right. And so it doesn't want us to see it blatantly. So, because so instead it projects it onto others and onto the body and life, etc.
Yeah, we project that belief and the ensuing the guilt and all the distress that brings to us. Well, a convenient way for the ego not to have us look at that is to project it out, which gives rise to the whole world and how we see it all, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just hold on for a second, sis. 3:14. All right. Yeah, but he says, but it is also true that without extension there can be no love. It remembering that the means by which God created us, really created the truth, his sons, is by sharing himself, his self.
Right.
And so the way that we awaken from the use of projection or the ego is by sharing or extending the truth of our being. It's by giving that love. And the highest form of that love here in the dream is forgiveness, genuine forgiveness, right? And it's by giving that, then we receive it.
Right.
Giving is receiving. When we're giving projection, we're receiving that projection. Yeah.
Yes.
And when we're extending love, we're also receiving that love. And we won't know that we really are love. And we've said this before in many different ways. We won't know we're love. We are love and nothing but love and safe until we give it. In giving it, we recognize that we are it. Yeah.
That it was in there to extend to begin with.
Yeah.
So we're either willing with God and letting Christ's vision look upon its own creation, its loveliness, its goodness, or we have a will apart from God and we're blocking God in our defenses and superimposing our own filter over everything and saying, this is my will, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So why is it that he says that without projection there can be no anger? Where does the anger arise in that? Is that between brothers because we realize that that's what we're doing?
Okay, remember projection makes perception.
Right.
All right. So without projection, there could be no anger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's our own anger that we're projecting out.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Shall I keep reading here?
Yeah.
So
Dropping
paragraph 2 of this section, the ego's use of projection must be fully understood before the inevitable association between projection and anger can be finally undone. The ego always tries to preserve conflict. It is very ingenious in devising ways that seem to diminish conflict because it does not want you to find conflict so intolerable that you will insist on giving it up. We know that one well, don't we, sis?
Yes. Yes.
Right? The ego therefore tries to persuade you that it, the ego, can free you of conflict, lest you give the ego up and free yourself. Using its own warped version of the laws of God, projection, the ego utilizes the power of the mind only to defeat the mind's real purpose. It projects conflict from your mind to other minds in an attempt to persuade you that you have gotten rid of the problem.
Right.
You've got to laugh, right? See it in somebody else, right?
That's much more convenient.
Isn't it? There are two major errors involved in this attempt. The first one, first, strictly speaking, conflict cannot be projected. This is important because it cannot be shared. Remember, and we've said this different ways, is that any kind of conflict or projection or anger or judgment actually breaks communication. The only communication there really is love, God's love, not the ego's love, God's love. Mm-hmm. So that's why he's saying conflict cannot be projected because conflict cannot be shared. Does that make sense?
Yes. So it's always personal.
Always. Yeah. And anything personal is the ego.
Right.
Private mind with separate agendas that can clash with others' private minds and separate agendas. Any attempt to keep part of it, the conflict, and get rid of another part of the conflict does not really mean anything. Remember that a conflicted teacher is a poor teacher and a poor learner. His lessons are confused and their transfer value is limited by his confusion. The second error is the idea that you can get rid of something you do not want by giving it away.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Giving it away is how you keep it. So when we judge another, when we see that shitful projection on somebody else, that's how we keep it. If we want to believe that,
right?
We want to believe that, believe in blame, right? Yeah. Right. The belief that by seeing it outside you, but the belief that by seeing it outside, you have excluded it from within is a complete distortion of the power of extension. That is why those who project are vigilant for their own safety. In other words, they're fearful of the future. Yeah. They're fearful of others, fearful of the future, fearful of loss, fearful of death, fearful of disease. Yeah. Right. They are afraid that their projections will return and hurt them. Believing they have blotted their projections from their own minds, they also believe that their projections are trying to creep back in. Oh, I know this one so well. Not now, but boy, those first few decades in this lifetime really, really showed me that. Yeah. Since the projections have not left their minds, these are the unforgiven projections, have not left their minds. They are forced to engage in constant activity. Anybody know that?
No.
No, in constant activity in order not to recognize this. Okay.
Yes.
So there's the obstacles to peace. The first obstacle is the desire to get rid of peace. Now, peace and love, safety and security are synonymous. They
Yes.
are one. So it's a desire, and it's the ego's desire, is to get rid of all of that. And to keep the fear, to keep the guilt intact and the fear. Yeah. And therefore the fear of the future. Yeah.
Can we slow down?
Sure.
Okay, so just take my hand and just walk with me, because I'm recognizing that the peace and the love and all of that is what we are.
Yeah.
And then to not know ourselves, we came up with a separation which filled the mind with guilt and fear and its images.
Mm-hmm.
And the belief that we are sin, which is another word for saying separation. So the belief in sin and separation gives rise to guilt and fear, and that's way too inconvenient. So in order to get rid of that, right, we blot that out of our mind by projecting it out onto the world and onto our brothers. Not me, them, right? Okay. But because they are our projections, it seems as though these projections are constantly trying to creep back into our mind, right? Now, the ego knows that if these projections were actually allowed back in, they're actually capable of forgiveness and returning our mind to the light, to the love, to peace. So the ego is heavily invested in us first believing that we're sin, projecting that belief out there, and then defending any attempt for those to come back in, which is why we fear union, why we fear joining, why we don't trust love, why we don't trust our brothers, right? That's if this were to actually come back to the source where it is in my mind, then there's the threat that my mind could be healed and I might actually remember my divinity.
You bet. That's the greatest fear of the ego.
Now help me from there to make this tie in with the idea of time.
Okay. So remember here that one thing you missed in your list of projections was a doozy, and that is the past.
Right.
That's probably one of our greatest projections.
Okay.
Because the past does not exist.
Right.
Right.
Okay, this is
all right. Okay. Funny you excluded that one, sis.
Well, no, because this is what I'm just getting with you on this. It's like, okay, so in the way that we take all this crap in our mind, sin incarnate and all the fear and guilt, we would put it out there. Where? Okay, so we put it out onto a mother and father that treated us badly. We put it out onto our first romantic partner who broke our heart. We put it out onto the job or the accident that we sustained, right? And those memories are creating a false past, and we're tucking all the unwanted guilt and attack thoughts out there. That literally creates the past. The past has never occurred.
No, that makes the past, which makes our future.
Yes.
That's how the future or time is perpetuated. Right. It's perpetuated by an unforgiven past.
Right. So then now we have the belief in that past that we made to hide our stuff in. And then that past creates the present filter, which then would overlay our future if we didn't forgive all this, right? And see what we're talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
But here's the clincher, and one that I didn't even see until recently, is we never forgive the past. Because otherwise it would be the ego attempting to forgive itself, which is impossible. Right. It's bullshit. Okay. So what we're doing is we're forgiving our own projections of the past. That's really taking the past,
yes,
the ideas of the past, and
mm-hmm.
and how we've been victimized in all the different forms by different people and circumstances, the
Yes.
body,
Yes.
accidents, whatever. And we're bringing it here and we're going, okay, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
This is obviously what I wanted.
Right.
Unless we come to that point
mm-hmm.
to admit that that's what we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
We have no idea why we wanted it, but obviously we wanted it.
We do now.
Projection, right?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah, I needed a place to put the fear and the guilt in my mind somewhere, right? So we plant it in the back. And can you all feel the difference between going through your past memories and forgiving this person for doing that and forgiving this and, realizing, yes, it's not really real, but you still have it in the illusory idea of a real past. And while there's a real past, it can't be forgiven. So it's only I'm forgiving myself for that projection of a past.
Yeah. Yeah. And while there's a real past, it's just so good talking about this.
It really is. This is fantastic.
There is a real ego identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whose past is it, right? Somebody's got to have the past. Who was that person in the past?
But see how the ego goes, okay, I'll forgive some aspects of the past,
right,
but not all of them.
Right. Yeah, even the good seeming past also has to be equally forgiven.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. The whole lot, all of it, all of it. Well, we can't do that forgiveness. We just need to show up and be willing with Holy Spirit, because he does it.
Yes.
It's the Holy Spirit that does it. He casts the light over the shadow of the past. And of course, then the past can disappear because the light's come to replace it, right?
And you could, oh man.
What's that?
I'm just seeing like things like sentimentalism or, fondness for the past. Really, you guys, we're going to come forward and say, well, I don't want to forgive, that really happened. It was good or whatever. But I'm realizing while that there is a past, all that is ego's projection of the fear and the guilt in our mind. If the past is real, then the guilt that we place there is protected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's it. Yep. Yep. Nostalgic memories of Christmas.
Thank you.
Right? Mm-hmm. And memories of Christmas for me and you. Mm-hmm. Right? Like we made an idol of Christmas.
Yes.
All of the gift giving, the fun of buying the gifts,
the tree trimmings,
the
Christmas carols.
That's it. All of that. My God. It's not bad.
No.
It's not that it's bad, but it does need to be divinely repurposed.
Yes.
Because we don't really know the meaning of Christmas through the ego filter.
Wow.
Because it uses those kinds of nostalgic memories against us to attack us later on when we're going through phases in life where perhaps that particular nostalgic euphoria is missing.
Yeah.
So the ego interprets that as we're missing. Mm-hmm. In other words, we're deprived.
Yes.
And therefore we're guilty and deserving of death. Yeah. Don't you love that ego?
And age and time are contingent on belief of this body going along that timeline. So, the body and the past are one and the same. You can't think of yourself or have a concept of the self without the past and its story. But when you forgive it, like there goes the idea of the body along with it. It's really big.
Yeah. And just to confirm that we're never forgiving the past. Mm-hmm. This is so important. Yeah. We're only ever forgiving our own projections of the past because the past never existed. Mm-hmm. And if we don't forgive our own projections of the past, then we're going to increase the illusion of time. Mm-hmm. Remembering that the illusion of time is also suffering. We're going to increase suffering. And as you said, time and the body are one.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to increase suffering of the body as well. That's what aging is. So
That
we're
is
making
okay.
time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's only ever just here now. And even the thought of yesterday, right? When you think about, well, what did I do yesterday? You have to think of the body and where it was and what it was experiencing. And yet that too is a projection in the mind. If you could just catch this for a second, just realize we are mind. We are not this body. We never have been the body. And that all that really exists is an eternal now, without a beginning, without an end. If everything's eternal, there was never a start date and there's not a finish date. So how can you quantify anything? How could there be a yesterday, a today, or a tomorrow? Reality is out of this paradigm completely. Like, yeah. So
It
forgiving
is.
the projection of time, forgiving ourselves for the projection of the body in that seeming time, the gap.
Mm-hmm. The gap. And just tying this in with this lesson, 314, I seek a future different from the past.
Mm-hmm.
We can probably appreciate now that there's no way in the world that we can seek a future different from the past unless we've forgiven our projections of the past,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And he says in the first line of this lesson, from new perception of the world, there comes a future very different from the past.
Yes.
The future now is recognized as but extension of the present.
Yeah.
What the hell does he mean? He means present sinlessness, because we've already forgiven our projections of the past. If we haven't forgiven our projections of the past, then we're carrying that belief that we are sin with us into the future
Mm-hmm.
and making time.
Yes.
That's why he says past mistakes can cast no shadows on the future, so that fear has lost its idols and its images in the gap, and being formless, it has no effects. Then he goes on to with this amazing statement: death will not claim the future now. For life, in other words, love as sinlessness, is now its goal, and all the needed means are happily provided. And I will add, effortlessly. All right. The future is effortless because it's not superimposed by an unhealed past.
Mm-hmm.
Who can grieve or suffer when the present has been freed, extending its security and peace into a quiet future filled with joy?
Okay, so that is the healed mind, the one that knows of sinlessness and wholeness,
Yeah.
extending that impulse, that loving impulse, extension is now creating or making the future.
Yes.
So it's only going to be producing more of itself. So it's not fear and separation and sin that's being projected, it's wholeness and innocence and love that's being extended. That's creation. That's creating with God. That's letting God's will be here, done here on earth. Yes. Wow.
Beautiful. I didn't finish the quotes. I don't know if I should just read the last two.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. I think it's paragraph 4. You cannot perpetuate an illusion about another without perpetuating it about yourself. Oh my God. That says it all right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my mother was an abuser.
Was she?
Well, right. What I've got to say is that if I believe that, I was an abuser, right?
Yes.
My mother wasn't an abuser. There is no way out of this because it is impossible to fragment the mind. To fragment is to break into pieces, and mind cannot attack or be attacked. That's profound, isn't it?
Yes.
And we're all mind, we're not body.
No.
So we can't attack or be attacked in truth. Only the body can have fantasies of attack. The belief that it can, that the mind can attack, an error the ego always makes, underlies its whole use of projection. It does not understand what mind is, and therefore does not understand what you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yet its existence is dependent on your mind because the ego is your belief. The ego is a confusion in identification. Or you could say that again.
Yeah.
Never having had a consistent model, the ego never developed consistently. It is the product of the misapplication of the laws of God by distorted minds that are misusing their power. And then Jesus says, do not be afraid of the ego. I'm going to say that again. Do not be afraid of the ego. It depends on your mind.
Mm.
And as you made it by believing in it, the ego, so you can dispel the ego by withdrawing belief from it. That's what we're doing with these lessons.
Yes.
Do not project the responsibility for your belief in it, the ego, onto anyone else, or you will preserve the belief, right, of the ego.
You're a victim, yeah.
Yep. When you are willing to accept sole responsibility for the ego's existence, you will have laid aside all anger and all attack because they come from an attempt to project responsibility for your own errors.
That's why taking accountability is never judgment. It's a power move. That's like placing it where it can be healed and forgiven.
Oh, beautifully said.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a blessing.
It is. Yeah. We want this. The ego doesn't want this. Yeah. Yes. Yes. To say this is always and only mine. To the extent that I'm triggered, it's only and ever mine to heal. And I want to heal it for the entire, sonship. Because again, there is just one mind, but this aspect of the sleeping sonship's mind and its projections is ready to be healed. Take it all.
That's it.
Including the past. Not going into a real past and doing forgiveness within it, but projecting the past as an idea in itself. Yeah, it's a big concept filled with all kinds of potent memories, but it's never actually occurred. No. There's a mind bend. Yeah.
Only the present is present.
That's it. The eternal now. Mm-hmm. You guys ready to forgive the past? The so-called past?
No.
No? Is there anything that you would hold on to?
Well, I guess for me right now is that I've learned that, like I just said before, I don't want to forgive the past. I want to forgive my projections of the past. Right. That's what I meant.
Thank you. Yeah. I think of it as just one idea that is a projection from our mind, and that needs to go. Not to go like diving into some balloon of a real past and trying to forgive anything in it. It's just a projection.
Very simple. Mm-hmm. In my process right now is that as soon as I'm triggered, I have to go immediately to, well, I wanted this.
Yeah.
Whether I'm triggered by memory from the past, it's all the same, by another person, by my body, whatever, it's all the same.
Right.
Yeah. It's still projection. I must have wanted this and I don't want it now.
Right. Well, it makes sense if the mind wants to experience itself as separate and limited, and it came up with a body as the solution. How do you just appear in a body? It had to come up with some means for the body to arise that makes some sort of logic. So hence timeline and the infancy, and then, the removal of the knowledge of our innocence. You can see the perfection in the idea of time, but all of it arose in a thought system that's never existed. It's not like time has independent reality. It's the projection of the idea of time that needs to be forgiven. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
We
because
can do
time
this.
Is neutral.
That's it.
Remember?
Like the body.
Like the body. It's neutral. Time can't heal and it can't harm.
Right.
Unless we use it to heal or harm.
Right.
Yeah. That's it.
Well, that was way bigger than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, me too. Wow.
Wow,
Thank you.
sis.
I just thank Jesus for bringing that in this morning.
Holy smokes. Yes, thanks, Jesus. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Wow, talk about a deep dive. There's one right there. We should put a little guy with a snorkel going down. Let's get all of this, not just the surface stuff.
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Thanks,
Yeah.
sis. We love you. That was 314. Have fun with that. Let it
Bye.
go. Bye.
Bye.